you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week, we're going to be answering a couple of listener questions that we got over the past little while here. And first off, also, I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving if you're listening in the U.S. We're sorry we missed last week. Just kind of happened to fall during travel time, and that's what we did. So we just missed out. But we're going to be back to our normal schedule of every other Friday here for this foreseeable future. Before we dive into today's content, we want to thank those of you that have left a review for us. If you would like to review, just go on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice and leave us a review. And we thank all of you that have already done so. Also, we're going to be answering questions. So if you have one, you can go to our website at budgetcouple.com and click on the contact page, and it will go right to our inbox, and we'll be able to answer and respond from there. With that said, let's move on to our first listener question.
All right, I'll start us off by reading it for us and just getting a little of the details so we can dig in. My husband and I have our mortgage, and then we have my husband's student loan, which is about $19,000. As of July, we have a car payment again since I got in a car accident, and we're in need of a car a little earlier than we thought, and that's $15,000. My husband always likes to have $10,000 in our emergency fund since we own a house. We're about to be back up to our emergency fund, but now my question is, should we try to pay off both of our loans as fast as we can instead of saving more since we're planning on having starting a family next year? Also, my husband would like to know if he should increase what he pays in his Roth or 401k, or should we just focus on paying down our debt?
All right. So first off, thanks for the question. We definitely like the idea of leaving the emergency fund intact and rebuilding it. So that's fantastic. We're really in a good feeling with that. We wouldn't be touching that for anything because you're not in a situation that requires the emergency. And we're assuming that the car that you got, the reason why it went down was to help pay for that car. So rebuilding it, awesome. Number one. As far as starting a family or getting ready to that process, congratulations. It's a fun process. But just a couple things to take care of here. We really wouldn't focus on the saving up for that right now. Once you get pregnant, you have 9 or 10 months to kind of go through that process and start saving money. So it's not really necessary right now because it may take a while for that to happen.
Yeah. And just to back up, when we first read your question, initially I'm like, you know what, maybe they should start just padding their emergency fund even more a little bit, just if they are thinking about having a family next year. But then, thinking about it a little bit further, you don't know when it'll happen. It took us 2 years
a little over that.
For it to happen. And we started joking and thinking about it. It's like if we had started padding our crash fund or starting to save for a baby way back when we first started, we probably would have just gone absolutely crazy and ended up spending that money on something stupid because we were so frustrated.
Yeah. And to go off on a completely different tangent, if it doesn't happen right away, don't get frustrated at that. But if you have a ton of money saved away for that, it can be really tempting to just go on a lavish trip or to do something that you normally wouldn't do to try to dull that pain. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind that don't start saving for it until there's a need to. And until that need happens, start paying down the debt.
But yeah, that's the important thing, just because you're not putting away money, which I do suggest once you actually get pregnant. But, even if you're not putting away money to save for a kid, it is a really smart idea to pay down as much debt as possible. It's great. You when you have a kid, there's just so much, everything costs money, and daycare, if that's something you're going to have to do, is very expensive. It is good to have as little monthly debt as possible going into it. So we agree that definitely work towards paying down this debt.
Right. And as far as the putting money on the debt or retirement question, we don't know anything about your income or how things are spending, so it's going to be a little different. But for us, we would definitely try to, at a minimum, put enough on retirement to get a match from our employer if they offered it. Because that's free money, and I'm a big fan of free money. So at a minimum, we'd try to do that if that was something that was offered. At the same time, depending on your percentages and where things are at, you could put money into retirement or you can focus on paying it off. As Danielle just said a little bit ago, kids are expensive, and having lower monthly payments or no monthly payments on things is a really desirable thing. You have a lot to worry about, and one less bill, while it doesn't seem like a lot, it really does make things a lot easier. So if you're focused on the family end of things, our focus right now until that happens would be paying off as much debt as possible. And then once hopefully the pregnancy happens, then you can go ahead and start saving for that. And then once kind of the dust settles from all that, you can start really focusing on retirement. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this, but that's kind of where our heads are at right now.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have to look at your interest rates as well, and so if you do have one that's like our car, for instance, where we have on one of our cars, well, one is paid off, but on the other, we have a 0% interest. So we aren't paying extra on that. We're just paying the minimum monthly payment, and we're not worrying about that because our money is better spent in the stock market, or paying down our house. So, if your interest rates are really low on any of those, it may be worth putting more into retirement if you're going to get a lot more through the stock market. And like Nate said, make sure that you're, taking care of any match that your company offers, to you first before you do anything else. The only other thing I guess I'll say is I'm really a big fan of the Roth IRAs. The amount you're allowed to put in each year is much smaller than the amount you're allowed to put into your 401k. It's $6,000, I believe, each
As
year.
of the time of recording, yes.
Yeah. So, if you're able to max that out, it might be a good thing. We max ours out every year. It's just great to have that. In the future, when you have that, it's not taxable. So you have that growing tax free, which is absolutely awesome. So, but again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit, but I would, if you're thinking about having a family, I would go ahead and get that debt paid down.
Yeah. And just on the other end of retirement, if you can spare like an extra $100 a month, it's not going to have a big impact on your debt, but it could have a big impact down the line on your future retirement. So while I advocated for paying down the debt as much as possible, if you can spare just a little bit to put on retirement, it's not a bad idea. So hopefully that helped. If you have a question or we didn't answer something fully, just shoot us an email back and we'll get back in touch with you. But let's go ahead on to listener question number 2.
All right. My goal for 2020 is to be in charge of mine and my boyfriend's finances. I like the control.
Oh, stop it.
We have goals for the future that all include being financially prepared. We want to get married, buy a house, and start a family in the future. We're currently renting. I have a few small credit cards and one giant credit card. My boyfriend has several small credit cards as well. We also each have auto loans. So my question for you is, how do I pay off my giant credit card loan? I've had this card for about 5 or 6 years, and as time went on, the availability went up, and so did my charges. In order for me to feel like I have my finances in check, I need this card paid off. The balance is about $5,500, and the minimum payment is $120. What advice do you have for me to pay off this card?
Okay. So first off, awesome 2020 goal of getting finances in check. Because having a large credit card debt out there and then several smaller ones and auto loan, it does feel overwhelming. So we want to go through and figure out the process that we go through to get this thing paid off as quickly as possible and to help you achieve your 2020 goals. So paying off a credit card is really all about having your budget in order, figuring out what you need, what you don't need, and kind of making sure you know where your money's going. Because right now, a lot of this is because we've spent money that we didn't have, and we just have to kind of slowly pay it back over time, which means it actually costs you a lot more money in interest payments and other things. So we want to make sure that we come up with a reason and a way of making sure we don't get into this situation again. And this is how we would do it. The first thing we're going to do is identify all the necessary things on our budget. So we have rent. We have our auto loan, we have utilities, we have food, basically the things that you need to survive in order to have your job and to live your life. That is not going out or anything like that. That is just the absolute necessities. It may be a boring, terrible life, but the things that you need to live that boring and terrible life is what we're looking for. Once we have that addressed, we're going to go ahead and take a look at anything that you spend that you don't have to. That can be going out to eat. It could be subscriptions like Netflix or Amazon or whatever, because that's the world apparently now is a subscription model. But basically anything that you don't have to have, we're going to identify those as well. And basically, we're just going to try to come up with how much we spend each month and have two lists. How much money we spend on the things we need and how much money we spend on the things we don't need. Because then we can identify where things we can start cutting back are and exactly what we need to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, it is an awesome goal to be financially secure and really in control of your finances. It's an amazing goal for 2020, but it might hurt for a little bit. It's not going to be easy. It is kind of easy to, especially around the new year, start to feel really pumped up and feel really excited and looking forward to tackling things. It's going to get a heck of a lot harder come February, March, when you don't have that momentum anymore and you're just trying to slug through and you've lost 3 of your subscriptions. You don't go out to eat 5 times a week anymore. You're losing a lot of the things that probably you had gotten accustomed to, whatever they may be for you. And so, don't go into this thinking it's going to be fun or easy the whole time. It's going to be challenging, but it's completely worth it. And, you struggle for a year or maybe less or maybe a little more, and you come out of it just feeling incredibly in control and being at a point where you can actually spend money and have things in a responsible way and, be financially safe.
Right. Because that struggle really teaches you what your limits are, what you should and shouldn't do. And it teaches you to kind of stay in your lane, financially speaking. So basically, once you have that budget established, you're going to know how much money you have left over at the end of every month. And then you can see how much extra you could put on things. So if you're spending, let's say, $300 a month in going out, well, guess what? Now you have $300 extra that you can spend each month on paying off your credit cards. And we might also not advocate entirely on just paying down that big credit card right away. A lot of this stuff is also mental and emotional. So it feels good to start paying things off. And if you have a credit card that's sitting out there with $200 on it, just getting rid of that, just knowing that that's not there, it's not a worry in your life anymore, that sometimes can be much more powerful than just paying off the one big debt and seeing $5,500 going to $5,300. That doesn't feel like you did a whole lot, even though you did. But if you can completely get rid of one of the bills, it feels a lot better, which motivates you, especially when you get into the doldrums where you're you start off on fire and you kind of get into the habit of doing stuff, and then you don't see the needle moving as quickly anymore. It's a good way to go ahead and reignite that fire is paying things off.
And it gets rid of one of those credit cards. So the second you pay off one of those smaller cards, get rid of it. It might be, we use credit cards. We've talked about them a lot on the show. And we love them for their reward points. We love them for the way it allows us to keep track of our spending, strangely enough. But we have never once not paid our bill in full at the end of every month. And we've never not once known exactly what was going to be on our credit card at the end of the month. So we never we never put more on it than what we have in our checking account. So that's our, that's our rule, and we don't break that, and we're comfortable with it. And we've been living that way for a long time. But if you're not at that point yet and credit cards are still a temptation and a struggle for you, start by getting rid of them. So if you can get rid of some of those littler ones, it's great for your mental state, but it also can allow you to just cut it up and get rid of it. The other thing I'll say, like Nate said, it's easy to focus on the biggest amount, but it may not be necessarily the highest interest rate. So if there's one that has a much higher interest rate, it might be better to knock that one down first. It just depends. You have to do the math and figure out where you're losing out the most money.
Right. And also, once you eliminate little ones, let's say they have a minimum payment of $25, once you eliminate that card, now you have an extra $25 a month to throw at the bigger one, which again, doesn't sound like a lot, but every little bit is going to help, and every little bit is going to build up to allow you to pay that thing off quicker. So while that big one is the white whale sitting out there that you want to get, getting a few of those smaller ones and easier ones may actually be beneficial to you as well.
And, also, this is a situation where we were just talking about retirement earlier. We very much advocate for saving for retirement. But if you are putting anything into retirement right now that is not getting your match with your company, then stop. Stop and put it towards these credit cards, because the interest rates on these credit cards are just going to drain you. So it's much better to hold off for a year or so on your retirement and get rid of this, instead of trying to do both at this point. So that's another suggestion.
Yeah. And if you need any more help with reaching that goal or any suggestions, please let us know. But we're really interested to hear about what you're doing, how it's going. And again, it's a fantastic goal. We wish you all the best luck with it, and any support that we can do to provide you in accomplishing that, please let us know. But I think that's going to go ahead and wrap us up for today. Thank you, everybody who's wrote in. We have lots more questions to answer, and we appreciate it greatly. If you have a question, again, you can go to budgetcouple.com and click on the contact form, and we'll be able to get back in contact with you and answer you here live on the air. And also, if there's anything else that you can pop up or suggestions you have, just let us know, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Yeah. And I'll just add too, if any of you guys think we're perfect or we've got this all figured out, I was literally just arguing with Nate about how he doesn't put any of his Amazon purchases on our budget. So we have our issues too. I promise.
And even though she yelled at me, I still haven't done it. She just reminded me that I need to do that just by saying that. So I need to go do that. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your time. And thanks again for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.